Mutual funds, index funds, and exchange traded funds. What the hell are they? Hey everyone, and welcome to The Savvy Squaddie. In this video, we'll be talking about the different types of investment funds that the average investor will come across. Firstly though, what is a fund? A fund is a pool of money which is allocated for a specific purpose. Things like paying mess bills to fund functions, paying into your sync fund, and even chipping into a PayPal pool for a colleague's leaving presents are all examples of funds. In the investing world though, a fund is used to buy stocks and bonds and other assets. So, why invest in a fund? One reason is because a fund is convenient. You only have to buy the fund once to own a small piece in all the companies within the fund. If funds didn't exist, but you still wanted to own a piece of each of those companies, then you would have to buy each one individually, which in turn could cause you to incur a lot more fees and charges than you would have with a fund, and you would also waste a lot of your time going through the process to buy all of them individually. A fund solves that issue and saves you a lot of time and stress. Another reason is diversification. As a fund is full of hundreds of stocks or bonds, you have your money split between them all. So, if one of the companies goes bust, you'll barely notice it, as that is such a small percentage of your portfolio. Investing in funds is by far much safer than investing in individual companies. Being diversified spreads out your risk. For example, Joe buys one unit of a fund at £200, while Jane buys one share of Bifters for £200. Bifters is also held in the fund that Joe is now a part of, but it only makes up 1% of the fund's portfolio. If Bifters goes bust, then Joe will only lose £2, but Jane will lose £200. However, if it went the opposite direction and doubled, that is where Jane will make a lot more money than Joe, but the risk for Jane is a lot higher than that of Joe. I'll be honest with you, you could potentially make more money investing in individual companies, but this requires dedication to learn and understand that company from the ground up. You will definitely lose your money if you go in without understanding it, but this takes time that people don't want to spend, which is where funds come in. They are the best place for the everyday person to put their money. It may be more boring and there is a chance you will not make as much money, but it's a lot safer and stress-free. If you are investing and it's boring, then you're probably doing it right. So, what type of funds are there? There are many types of investment funds, but in this video I will be going over 3 types. This is because in my eyes these are the 3 that are most common and the ones you will most likely come across as an everyday investor. And they are all also very similar but have key differences that in some cases could affect your returns. So the first one is a mutual fund. This is a professionally actively managed fund. Active management means that there is a fund manager who is making the decisions for you on what to buy and sell in order to try and beat the market and get better than average returns for their clients. In exchange for this educated professional managing your money, you will pay much more in fees than you would if the fund was passively managed, which I'll come on to in a minute. I will go into an example of how damaging these fees can be later on in this video. A fund manager may pick assets to do with a certain niche like technology or automotive to hold in their fund, or they may just have a fund that tracks an index, which brings us on to our second type of fund, the index fund. An index fund can be a type of mutual fund, but one that is passively managed and not actively managed. This is because the index fund tracks a financial market index. So, what is a financial market index? Well, an index is a list. So in terms of the financial market, it is a list of companies dictated by certain criteria. For example, the FTSE 100 is an index or list of the top 100 companies in the UK, and the criteria to be on that list is market capitalization, also known as the value of a company. You can then follow the performance of this index via a fund that tracks it. The fund increases in value as the companies it tracks also increase in value. There are literally thousands of indexes and equally as many funds that track them. So because the fund tracks an index, it doesn't require much management, as there is no need to be constantly buying and selling assets to beat the market, as the aim of an index fund is to track the market and meet its returns, not beat them. This means that fees are much lower than that of actively managed mutual funds. Now, mutual funds and index funds can only be bought once a day, and that is usually at the end of the day at market close. You can send your money over to your brokerage during the day, but your order won't go through until market close at the NAV, or net asset value price. The NAV is calculated by the total value of the portfolio divided by the number of outstanding shares. Outstanding shares being those that have already been purchased. But this is where ETFs or exchange traded funds come into play. This allows you to buy and sell funds as if they were stocks during market hours. This way, when you purchase an ETF, the order will go through straight away at whatever the price is when you made the purchase. But in my opinion, being able to see the price of a fund go up and down and to be able to buy and sell during market hours allows for impulsive and often silly decisions to be made. People may allow their emotions to take control and panic sell when they see their fund drop 1%, for it then to go up 1.5% by market close. Whereas an index fund, you sort of chuck your money in and forget about it. If you are a long-term investor, which in my opinion, you're not an investor if you're after short-term gains, you're more like a gambler, then you don't need the instant tradability that ETFs offer, as it could do more harm than good. So now you know all that, how can you buy funds? The easiest way to buy funds is by using an online platform. You could go down the route of having a financial advisor and phoning them to do it for you, or you could keep more money in your pocket and do it yourself. It isn't hard and doesn't take much time at all. So do some research on which platform suits you and set up an account. You want to set up a stocks and shares ISA. This way you will benefit from not paying taxes on the money you withdraw. I use Vanguard and it is very simple to set up an account, deposit money and buy funds. When doing research, make sure you look at what fees they charge, as everyone is different and you could get a better offer elsewhere. Once you've set up an account, deposit some money and pick the fund you want to invest in that correlates with your risk tolerance and financial goals. Bear in mind, different platforms might have a minimum monthly deposit or minimum lump sum deposit when you open the account. Now, for an example to show how damaging fees can be, Joe and Jane both invested into mutual funds at 20 years old. Joe invested into an actively managed fund with a 2% annual fee, whilst Jane invested into a passively managed index fund with a 0.5% annual fee. They both stuck in a £1,000 lump sum deposit and then a further £100 per month for the next 45 years until they were 65, with an average annual return of 8% over that period. At the end of the first year, Joe had paid £44 in fees, whilst Jane paid £11 in fees. Not a huge difference, however, over a long period, these fees add up due to compounding. So, at the end of 45 years, Joe's portfolio is now worth just over £284,000, but he had paid a total of nearly £248,500 in fees. He lost almost 47% of his total portfolio to fees. That 2% didn't seem like much to begin with, but it added up over his life. Jane's portfolio, after 45 years, is now worth £454,000, and she had paid around £78,500 in fees over that period. She lost nearly 15% of her portfolio gains to fees, but she is still over 30% better off than Joe. Some things to bear in mind with fees are the fact that you will have to pay them regardless if your portfolio earns or loses money. So on a bad year, where there may be a 10% loss overall, Joe will actually lose 12% and Jane will lose 10.5% that year. Actively managed mutual funds have higher fees. This is because there is a team of managers and analysts trying to pick stocks to beat the market, and they still need to get paid for that work. However, studies have shown that only 23% of mutual funds beat the market, and this might not even be by a full percentage. So for example, if one year Joe's actively managed portfolio beat the market by 1%, his returns would still decrease by 2% because of the fees, and even though Jane's passively managed index fund was beaten by 1%, as she is only paying 0.5%, her returns are still more than Joe's. So on paper, the actively managed fund beat the market, but the actual investors are worse off than those who invest in passively managed index funds, which track and meet the market. Also, I didn't include extra fees associated with funds in the examples because it can vary and differ so much, but there may also be a commission fee, a transaction fee, and also capital gains may be passed on to you as well. Capital gains is where you pay tax on the profits you make when you sell an asset. The fund manager is constantly buying and selling assets, so when they make a profit on the selling of those assets, they have to pay tax on that profit. These taxes can then be divided up amongst the investors and come as another fee. As index funds track a market index, there is very little buying and selling, and so the fees are a lot less. But how can you tell what fund is actively managed or passively managed? It's very simple. If a fund tracks an index or is an ETF, then it is passively managed. If it has ETF in its title, then it is passively managed. On Vanguard, in the fund's details, it will say something like this. Also, you can always ask or use Google if you are not sure if the fund you are buying is actively or passively managed. Investing in funds is the easiest and safest way to achieve long-term financial growth. It is so easy to do and there really isn't anything to be worried about. The best time to start is now, but the younger you are, the more time you have to benefit from compounding. I really hope this video has helped explain mutual funds, index funds and ETFs, and that you now have a better overall understanding of them. If you have any questions, please let me know down in the comments below. Thank you all for watching. If you liked what you just saw, please hit the subscribe button up there, and if you want to see some more videos, click over there. See you soon.